Oh hey, it's Wes, and today it's finally time to talk about the Viltrox 85 1.8 PFU RMBH. I'm just going to call it the Viltrox 85. Let's hit it with the B-roll. The Viltrox 85-1.8 is an autofocus, value-priced, wide aperture lens for full-frame Sony E-mount. It's a great new, value-priced option that will let you get the job done without having to break the bank. How good is it? Well, I've been running this out at professional jobs, hobby jobs, and just about everything that I can put this against, and it's time for me to give you my thoughts on this lens. First of all, the build. And with the build, we'll see what it comes with in the box. The box itself is kind of hard to get into. There are a few stages of access. The box itself is quite nice with some custom cut foam, a carry pouch that admittedly I never use, and a manual and some snack time silica gel. Nothing extravagant, but honestly I like these little carry pouches more than I like Sony's fanny pack pouches that come with their lenses for whatever reason. The lens itself is an all-metal design, which is kind of something we're seeing from third parties a lot these days. It makes it feel very nice and premium. The manual focus ring is very well damped, almost too well damped. With a smaller Sony E-mount camera, you're really wrenching against this to get it to move any long focus throw. It's very, very smooth, very nice, but you gotta really wrench on it. It comes with a very typical generic back cap, and if we look at the back of the lens, we see some interesting stuff. There is no O-ring for waterproofing. This is not a water-sealed lens, but there is a micro USB port on the back for firmware updating. I updated the firmware on mine when I got it to version 14, and that's what this test is based on. Already, since testing, version 15 has come out. I don't think it's changed it that much. The lens hood is not metal. The lens hood is actually quite irritating to me. It's very cheap plastic, a matte finish on the inside. It's one of those hoods that if you're in a hurry, you're going to have trouble getting it off. If you squeeze the hood at all, it's not going to come off without feeling like you're breaking it. You have to be very gentle and not squeeze the hood in any way, then it operates quite easily. I didn't realize this to begin with, because normally I just grab my hoods real fast and, well, it doesn't go anywhere when you do that. A gentle hand. There are no other buttons or switches on the lens, and honestly that's fine with me. I generally don't use those things. I have shortcut keys on my camera to do those tasks. Overall, with the cheapy lens hood and no weather sealing, but a very solid construction, we have an 8 out of 10 for build quality. Next up is image quality, and I guess that's what we're here to find out about. This thing is very sharp for what you might consider to be a generic lens. At all apertures, at f1.8 wide open, this is a reliably sharp, across the field lens. The copy that I have doesn't seem to have any decentering, and from edge to edge, it is quite sharp. Not perfectly sharp around the edges at the corners at 1.8, mind you, but it is as good as a lot of my lenses. The only lens that I have that is more consistent from edge to edge would be the 85 G Master and the 90mm macro. I have a lot of other lenses that aren't as consistent as this one, which is pretty surprising for the price. Contrast wide open is pretty good, and when you stop it down, if you wanted to get a little sharper, it will get a little bit sharper. Not a lot though. It's pretty consistent. Again, consistency is key with this lens. Flare control is good, not great. Honestly, it was better than I thought it would be. And chromatic aberration is about where you'll expect it to be. It's not in like modern art lens territory. You do get green and purple chromatic aberration pretty regularly with this. It's not an enormous amount, but you're definitely going to see it. So, image quality, it is a solid performer, and what I like most about it, it is very predictable in its image quality. It gets an 8 out of 10. Image character. And here's another spot that I don't really have much to complain about. The bokeh on this lens is shockingly smooth. It blew me away. At f1.8, the bokeh looks almost identical to the bokeh in my 85 G Master lens, and I greatly prefer the bokeh on this lens to the 85 1.8 from Sony. I don't have one of those in my hands right now, but just based on what I've seen, the bokeh in that lens tends to swirl a bit. It's a little bit harsher, whereas this one has a much creamier texture, and when you have a busy scene, it doesn't swirl nearly as much and keeps things reasonably smooth. It's surprisingly solid. Out of focus transitions are quite smooth. It doesn't really have a lot of pop like you would expect from some high-end lens or a Zeiss lens or something. It still looks great, especially for the price. And I love the lens flares. They have a nice, smooth, warm tone to them with just a little bit of radial lines that just, honestly, it almost looks photoshopped at times with the way that the sun shines through this lens. It's pretty satisfying. And sun stars, I'm a big fan of sun stars. They're only okay on this lens. Maybe there's not enough aperture blades. You get them, they're fine. I wouldn't rely on them to be groundbreaking in any way, but sun stars aren't a huge part of most people's valuation of lens character. So overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 for lens character. I really like the way this lens renders. Autofocus. This is where things get complicated, I guess, as it often does in autofocus. One note about the firmware. When you check the firmware through the camera body, you're not getting the actual firmware revision. The camera body doesn't seem to know what it is. You have to plug it into the Viltrox software to find out what it is. And the total entire firmware revision number is 1.0.14. And that's what I tested it on. The performance of the autofocus in this lens will vary greatly depending on what kind of photography you do and how you do it. Let me explain. In natural light, indoor, low light, any of those situations where you're not using flash, this performs fantastically. As a matter of fact, it well outperforms this 85 1.4 G Master, handily. I took this to the ballet to take pictures of one of their dress rehearsals. This was a real professional paid gig, a commercial gig. And I immediately took test shots with both the G Master and this lens. We're talking very low light, somewhere between ISO 5000 and even up to 25,600. Crazy low light situations, and this performed way better than the 85 G Master. I could not get reliable focus locks with the G Master. I'm not surprised at that. I've always had trouble with it in low light on the A7 III and even the A9. This one, boom, boom, boom. Not quite as good as the 35 1.4, one of my favorite autofocusing lenses on Sony, but very reliable. So I used this for the whole performance as one of my lenses, and it performed very well. And even in backlit situations, like when Laura was standing here and the sun was shining in behind her, the 85 G Master again had trouble locking focus, and this had no issue at all. Now it looks like we're shaping up for an easy 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5, because tracking focus and even video focus, in which I have been using on this camera, my B camera, this lens, and it has been performing perfectly in video autofocus, back and forth. It is as good or better than the 85 G Master, again. Very smooth, very reliable in video autofocus. So what's the problem? As soon as you break out a flash, especially off-camera flash, a lot of the time when you take a picture with this, bangs right out of focus and snaps right back in. I did a photo shoot with this lens with flash, and honestly I didn't lose any pictures. It snaps back into focus so fast that it doesn't matter, but thankfully I didn't have to do any burst shooting, because if I did, that would be a problem. Oh hey, it's editing Wes. Just cutting right in here. So I have tried and tried to reproduce this problem that I had. And it was just to this one photo shoot where I was using an 8600 Pro in a 7-foot parabolic umbrella, which I am wont to do. And when I took the pictures, it would snap out of focus, snap right back in. Again, I didn't miss any shots. I have taken so many more pictures after this to try to get B-roll for this video, assuming that since it was reasonably consistent and happening at that photo shoot, it would be easy for me to reproduce. It hasn't been. So I don't know if it was something that I was doing or if it's something that this lens was doing, but maybe it's not an issue. Maybe I did something wrong. I tried it in low light, in normal light, bright flash, dim flash, continuous, single shot. I mean, I only ever shoot in continuous anyway, so I don't think it was single shot. I don't know. But in any case, I still end up giving this a pretty solid score for autofocus, and I still won't trust it 100% at a professional shoot to autofocus with flash, just because that has happened to me. Do I trust it more now? Yeah, I do. I can't make this thing fail right now. So take what you will from that. It seems to be pretty reliable. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully a firmware update will come out in the future that says improves reliability with flash, which actually already came out in the past. Maybe another one. Who knows? But back to you, Wes. And sometimes when the flash goes off, it just pops out of focus and comes back. I don't know what's doing it, but I'm pretty sure it can be fixed through a firmware update. Hopefully Viltrox will solve that eventually and come up with that update for us. But until then, I can't give the autofocus any more than an 8 out of 10. It is super solid and reliable, but it's got to lose a couple points for that really weird flash behavior. Value. This is where we're expecting this to do well. We've got a third-party lens, and it doesn't cost that much. We're talking $400 for this lens. Autofocus, high optical quality. That's pretty good. What else can we get? Well, there's the Samyang 85 1.4 for $680, solid contender. We have the Batis 85 1.8, $1,200. Ouch. You get 3 of these for that. Then there is the, honestly, the only direct, real competitor for this lens, the cheap Sony 85 1.8. It's reliable, it is solid, it is sharper than this. $600. That's not a huge price difference. So that's some pretty tight competition there. I mean, you've got the Sony 85 1.4 that we're filming on right here, $1,800. And this kills it for the autofocus, has very similar rendering, but it can't get to 1.4, isn't quite as nice in the rendition. But it competes with it. You could get this Sigma 85 1.4 for $1,200. That hardly seems like a worthwhile upgrade at that point. You could go down to a manual focus lens. There's the manual focus Viltrox for $300 or the Rokinon 1.4 for $250. So yeah, you can get an 85 for Sony for less money. But for autofocus, you can't. This is the best. This is a 9 out of 10 for value. It is a solid value. So what's that give us? It gives us a 41 out of 50. That is a really high score. And honestly, it ties the 16 to 35 G Master in my rankings. It's funny how that kind of works out. Because this score is so much higher on value than that lens does. I gotta say, I am impressed. And if Viltrox could solve the flash problem with this lens through a firmware update, this is going to be a phenomenal contender. If you want to buy this lens, please use a link that I have in the description. It'll help support my channel and feed my family. And honestly, this lens is going to stay on my camera for real paid commercial photography and weddings, because it is smaller than the G Master and more reliable in some lighting situations. Most work I'll still be using the G Master, but when I'm not using off-camera flash and I have challenging lighting situations, this is the lens that I can rely on. And that's pretty surprising to me. And there you have it. The Viltrox 85 1.8. So, until next time, let's go take some photos.